Yeah, so I met this guy,
Yeah, so I met this guy.
and he's got some friends who are very,
Let's say interesting. He's got some friends who are very interesting. You should totally listen to this.
Guitarist, teacher, performer, blogger, and much more, Jay EuDaly is one of the most sought after musicians in the Kansas City area. So, welcome and thanks for taking some time for us today, Jay, out of your busy schedule. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Good. Well, to kind of bring the folks up to speed here, tell us a little bit about your life and the occurrences in your life that have kind of brought you to who you are and where you are today.
I've been interested in music my whole life, basically. I got a ukulele when I was about 3, and I learned folk songs and songs from church and stuff. My mother taught me, and I got my first guitar when I was 11. And because of the ukulele experience, I could already play some stuff, but I basically taught myself first position chords, cowboy chords, from a Mel Bay book that came with the guitar. That guitar I called it a finger bleed special. We're talking probably 1966 or 66. It was $25 from Musicland.
A harmony or a K or a Stilla?
Oddly enough, ironically, it was called a Recco. It was spelled RECCO.
Okay.
But yeah, the action was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. But I was so obsessed with it, I powered through, and I got my first electric guitar. Probably, I'm kind of casting about trying to remember, but I would say it was probably 67 or 8. And when I was a kid, I had a transistor radio, and I listened to mid 60s pop, the Beach Boys. And I remember the Beach Boys and Jan Dean, Dead Man's Curve, that song. Whatever was on the radio, and by the time I got my electric guitar, I was into the late 60s. I'd call them trios, power trios, we'd call them now, I guess. Cream was very influential. Jimi Hendrix,
Mountain,
Grand Funk, and that music was improvisational. And so it opened me up, when years later, when I heard jazz, real jazz, it took, because jazz is all about improv, and what I'd been listening to kind of paved the way for me to acquire the taste. I wasn't exposed to jazz. I started playing professionally when I was probably 14. So that would be 69 and 70. I was in a band called Open Road Conspiracy. And we played coffee houses. There was a scene, places where a band, we were all teenagers. I was the youngest guy in the band. The lead singer could drive, so he was 16 and I was probably 14 or 15, and we played coffee houses and school functions and parties, in that era. In 1976 or 7, when George Benson crossed over. with the Breezin album.
Mhm.
I heard This Masquerade on the radio, and that was a big hit. And I'd never heard guitar played like that before. It was a very traditional jazz approach, influenced by Charlie Christian and Wes Montgomery. Would be, I think, probably George Benson's main influences. But that tune really grabbed me. I'd never heard the guitar sound like that before. I went out and bought that record. And then I bought every George Benson album I could find. And I didn't know that George Benson had been a jazz guitar player for 20 years. Before all that, that was his crossover hit. And he became an R&B star, mainly based on his singing. But his guitar playing never changed. It was any guitar playing that he did was always very jazz, coming from the jazz background. So that's what opened me up to jazz. And I realized later that the reason that I took to that was because of Cream. And Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker were both, the drummer and the bass player for Cream were both jazz musicians, kind of masquerading as rock stars. They were improvisational. The live albums were what I was mainly interested in, because the same song would be done different ways, with each performance. And that fascinated me. So when I heard jazz, that was all the improvisation going on in jazz. That was significant to me. So I thought I could learn the George Benson thing the way I'd learned everything else. You buy the record and you put the needle down and you hunt and peck until you find that sound. And then you put the needle down and you hunt and peck until you find that sound. That's the way I taught myself, and it was good enough. There's a saying in the music biz, you don't have to be good. You just have to be good enough. And I was good enough. I basically put myself through college playing. The college thing's another story, but I won't go into it. But I'm a double college dropout. I dropped out of college twice. But so I started in. I had a couple of. I had a Wes Montgomery album. It was a double album. It was a compilation of a couple different records, and I started in on it. And I had George Benson's albums previous to Breezin'. And I started in on those. I could get the melodies without a lot of problems, but the chords are more complex. The harmonies a lot more complex. And after a couple of years of working at it, I came to the realization that my talent wasn't enough. That maybe in 10 years I could fake it, but I would never know what I didn't know. And it was at that point that I started seriously looking for a teacher. And at the time I was going to college, I was a philosophy major. And I was going to college in Springfield, Missouri. At the time it was called Southwest Missouri State. I don't know what it is now. It's something else, but
Missouri State University.
Yeah. And it was a wonderful, carefree period of my life living in Springfield. I have lots of warm fuzzies from that era. I was footloose and fancy free, and I had a paid for car, and I rented a 2-bedroom house with another guy for $100 a month. That was about 3 blocks from the campus. And most of the time we had a third roommate. So I was paying $33 a month for rent. I could live for a school year, 9 months on $1,000.
Wow.
This was mid 70s.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I would play gigs, and I would work a summer job, and, whatever, mowing grass or, some kind of summer job, and save all that money. And then during the school year, I would play gigs that came up, and I could live that way, comfortably. And so anyway, at that time, I made the decision. I was 3 years into my philosophy degree, and I decided I didn't want to be a philosopher. So the default was a guitar player. So that was when I went, okay, if I'm going to make a living with the guitar, I need to get serious about learning, because I'm setting myself up. I don't know anything. I just play by intuition and ear and trial and error. And I'm setting myself up to compete with guys who do know what they're doing. And I've since found out there's a lot of guys that don't know what they're doing that are pro,
Yeah.
But that was my thinking at the time. So what I did was I dropped out of school and I moved back to Kansas City, moved back in with my parents, and enrolled in the classical guitar performance degree program at the Conservatory of Music at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. And that was the only thing I knew how to do. There was no codified career trajectory. You know what I mean? It was, I would just, a leap in the dark, and
It was well thought out. You'd go with somebody who taught.
yeah. Well, there were no really jazz schools at that time. I think Berkeley School of Music in Boston was in operation, but I didn't know about it. And maybe Miami University and North Texas State. I didn't know of any jazz music schools. The director of the guitar department at UMKC at that time was Douglas Sneat, and he was very well known. He was a protege of Christopher Parkening. He studied in Spain with Andre Segovia, who's like God in the classical guitar world. So my motivation was to study with Doug. That's what I wanted. And at the time, he wasn't teaching private students. You could only study with Doug if you were a classical guitar performance major. And you also had to pass an audition before he would take you as a student. So I studied with a student of Doug's for, I don't know, a semester maybe, to get a handle on, attempting an audition. So anyway, I auditioned and passed, and I studied with Doug for 3 years, and it was invaluable what I learned from him. And mainly reading and technique. That's the main thing with classical. No improv, you see. So I knew this is not the direction that I wanted to go, but it was the only thing I knew how to do. And I have no regrets about it. I mean, the technique and the reading and all that stuff has stood me in very good stead over the years. So at the same time that I was studying with Doug, I was gigging. I started gigging in clubs. The disco thing was going on, and there you could work 6 nights a week. So I got into the local scene, and started gigging. I got signed to an agency that it wasn't just Kansas City; it was all over the country. I was gigging 6 nights a week and studying with Doug. I blew off all the other classes for the degree program. I didn't care about it. I didn't care about composition. I didn't care about piano classes. I didn't care about any of that. I went to a few of them, but it was like, nah, this is not, I just want to study with Doug, so I blew everything off. Some of the time I was working a day job also. And in 79, I got married, and in 78, I got married in 78. And in 1980, had had my first kid. So, I was pretty busy. And, but at the same time that I was doing all that, I was on my nights off, I was bar hopping, and I was looking for a jazz guitar player that played the George Benson stuff that I was hearing and trying to figure out. There was a bunch of them, and some of them taught and some of them didn't, but all of them said John Elliott. They got all their stuff from John Elliott. John Elliott was a jazz piano player and big band arranger, local, and he, for a long time, practically the whole time as it was open, he was the house pianist in the main showroom at the Playboy Club in Kansas City. The Playboy Club, for a while, it was a franchise, and there were Playboy clubs in major cities all over the world. And there was a Playboy Club in Kansas City for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years. And John was the house pianist there most of that time. So he played with all the big names that were on the Playboy circuit, the comedians and the singers and, all that. So he was very well respected, and he was also well respected as an educator. He taught privately. He wasn't connected with any school. He was double the going rate, and he had a year's waiting list. And I was kind of skeptical because he didn't play guitar. So I started taking lessons from a jazz guitar player named Danny Embry. I took about 5 lessons from Danny, and he really opened up a lot of things for me. And I after about my 5th lesson with Danny, he said, "This will be your last lesson. I'm moving to LA next week, and I don't know if I'm ever coming back." And the next time I saw anything about him, I saw him on the Tonight Show playing with Sergio Mendez. He played with Sergio for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years maybe. But Danny's played with the biggest names in jazz since then. And anyway, I was devastated. I thought this was the guy, and now he's leaving, And I said, "Well, what am I going to do?" And I don't know if we're abiding by FCC rules here, but what Danny said was, "Man, you need to study with John Elliott. I got all my shit from him." And that was when I went, okay, I resigned myself. I'd been hearing about John. It seemed like all roads led to John. But I was skeptical about him not being a guitar player. And I'd also heard a lot of horror stories about how tough he was. And Danny said, "He's a little tough, but it's worth it." And that was the understatement of the century right there.
On both fronts.
Yeah.
He's a little rough and he's worth it.
Yeah. So I don't know. I had a moment of surrender, resignation. Okay, I'm going to have to study with John Elliott, And Danny, probably John's most famous guitar student is Pat Metheny.
Mm-hmm.
But any jazz musician, he taught everybody: guitar players, piano players, bass players, horn players. The instrument didn't matter. He had a method. He had a system of applying music theory to whatever instrument you played. And some guys that I've talked to, bass players, horn players, a few guitar players, he had them at the piano. He had them doing things on the piano. But he never put me on the piano. The bass and the horns and that kind of thing, they're a little bit more limited when it comes to harmony. You can't play chords on a saxophone, And John called what he taught the theory of harmony. That's the theory of chord construction and chord movement and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Danny said, "I'll put in a word for you, and here's his number. Wait a week and call him." So I did. And I called John, and John said, "Yeah, Danny told me about you. You're on the list. It'll be about a year." And I wasn't about to wait a year. So I found out where he was playing on my off nights. He had a steady, Monday night gig, Monday night gig somewhere. And I went anytime I had a night off where he was playing, I went and bugged him. And I got in about 3 months. And I studied with him for 7 years. And he is by far the most significant influence on my guitar playing. And because of him, I was able to play all those George Benson chords I tried for 2 or 3 years to figure out and couldn't figure out, you know. So I studied with John from 79 to 86. And for the first year, maybe the first semester, I was doing both Douglas Neat and John, and it was too much. The classical guitar thing that I was doing with Doug required me to practice 6 hours a day. And I was gigging every night. So there's another 4 hours of playing. So there's 10 hours of playing the guitar a day.
And you got a wife and family.
And I got, yeah. Well, I had my first kid in 1980. I started with John in 1979. I got married in 78. I studied with both for a while, and it was just too much. And so I had to decide. And I knew that what John was teaching me, that was the direction that I wanted. That was what I wanted to go. So I went into my lesson with Doug one day, and I explained everything, you know, what was going on. And I said, I am going to drop out, you know. So I dropped out of college a second time. And Doug was very understanding. Doug's teaching style and John's teaching style were like as far apart as you can possibly be. You know, I mean, Doug was, you know, he was serious. It was a classical guitar degree program. So both these guys, their agenda is to turn out pro players. But Doug was he was laid back, and, you know, John was, I suspect that John was probably some kind of undiagnosed bipolar, because he had you know, pretty extreme mood swings, and every week I'd go into my lesson wondering which John I was dealing with this week, you know, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the thing about John was he was really tough, and he was capable of slamming the door and telling you not to come back. But if he would, you know, bulldoze over 3 dozen people to find one student. And if you survived this initial, you know, a few months period of just getting reamed out and spanked all the time,
almost like hazing.
Yeah. He was emotionally invested.
Yeah.
You know, and I had conversations with him about certain guys that he taught, and he was like, yeah, you know, he was really talented. He got a lot out of what I was teaching and everything. But then, you know, since then, it just seems like he's forgot. He's forgot, you know, and you could tell that John had a lot of angst about that.
Oh,
because
yeah.
he was, you know, that was indicative of his emotional investment in the student.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
mm-hmm. Right.
So, but anyway, I'm having this conversation with Doug, and Doug says, "Oh," he goes, "John Elliott." He goes, "I've heard of that guy." He goes, "You know, I can play jazz. I can play some jazz." And I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Listen to this." So he plays this. Sorry, it's kind of early in the morning for me. He plays this classical guitar arrangement of Dave Brubeck's Blue Rondo a la Turk. Okay, that's a complex tune. It's in multiple time signatures. It has a contrary motion. You know, it's got all, and he's playing everything. He's playing the melody, the harmony, bass lines, chords. Then he does variations on the theme, you know, and then it just segues right into Take 5, which is another Dave Brubeck tune. It's in 5/4 time. And he's doing everything. He's doing all the melody and the harmony and the bass lines and all this stuff. It was jaw dropping. And he got done, and I said, okay. I said, as long as I live, I will never be that good. But I have a question. And Doug was, okay. I said, was any of that improvised? And he said, no. I arranged it. I scored it out. I practiced it 10,000 times to where I can do it every time without a mistake. That's the classical approach, right? And I said, okay, then that wasn't jazz. That was 20th century classical music. And Doug said, I can see that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And over the years, every once in a while, I would get a student referral from Doug. And the phone call would go like this. Yeah, I've been taking lessons from Doug Neat. After Doug retired from the conservatory, he teaches privately now, you know. And I would get these calls, and they would say, I've been studying with Doug Neat. And I asked him, I said, so when are we going to get to improv? And Doug said, I don't do that. Call this guy. So I would get lessons. I would get students from Doug that were interested in improv. So I was fortunate that I had studied 3 years of classical with Doug Neat before I studied with John, because John wasn't a guitar player, so he couldn't deal with technique. And even though John had an intellectual understanding of the guitar neck that's frankly better than most guitar players, he understood what was possible and how chords needed to be played. There were chord ways that piano players play chords that are impossible for guitar players. Real close voicings and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
John understood that the guitar was tuned in fourths and how that affected how chords should be voiced and all that kind of stuff. But he couldn't tell you what string, what fret, what finger, you know. So he spelled. That was the way he communicated with me, with guitar players. If he wanted you to play an F major 7 chord, he would say low to high, F, C, E, A. And you had to be able to do that. So because of my classical training, I had at least a functional knowledge of the neck. I was anything below the 5th fret, first position is what classical players would say. No problem at all. The further up the neck I got, the fuzzier things were. And I had to work out. I devised, I figured out a way to figure out every note on the neck to get to the note on the neck. And and John understood the instrument, and he would say, F, C, E, A, and you would play it. And he goes, now there are 2 more positions that you can play that chord in. 2 of them will sound alike, and 1 of them will be either an octave higher or lower. So you are having to deal with the entire neck with John. And so we spent probably about 9 months doing things that I could already do. And what he was doing was getting my spelling together. He was catching my brain up to my ear.
Helping you to understand more deeply what.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't think that it was, I don't know how thought out it was on his part. He just needed to be able to spell. In order to communicate, you had to be able to spell. you know. And so he did what he had to do to get you to that point.
To communicate that idea.
Right. And it was painful.
Probably
You know,
for both of you.
I mean, he could say, hey, play scale tone sevens in A flat. I could do that because of my studies with Danny. Danny took me through all that, but Danny didn't make me spell, you know. So he could say, John would say, play scale tone sevens in A flat, and I could boop, 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 just blop it right off. But no, I had to spell every note in every chord from low to high. A flat, E flat, G, C.
And verbalize them while you were playing them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have, I ran the numbers one time and it was ridiculous. You have seven 4-note chords. Okay.
Okay.
Scale tone sevens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the octave, which is 8.
Okay.
8 and 1 are the same. So like if you're in the key of C, to make it simple, C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G 7, A minor 7, B half diminished, and C major. So you're spelling all the notes in those chords, ascending and descending, in 3 positions in 12 keys.
Okay.
It's hundreds.
Yeah. That's really getting a grasp of things.
I got my phone. I got my calculator here. 4 notes times, ascending and descending. So you've got 15 times 3 positions times 12 keys. That's how many notes.
Wow.
Okay.
And I'm having trouble with major pentatonic scales of the different positions. Okay, position 1, position.
So you see what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It was grueling. And at first I'm going like C, G, B, I'm counting, E. That's one chord. So it was tough. It was grueling. And basically you had 20 minutes. It was a 30-minute lesson. You had 20 minutes. If you couldn't do it in 20 minutes, he sent you home with the same lesson. If you could do it in 20 minutes, that'd give him 10 minutes to explain the next lesson. And so on. And so, yeah, man. And it took 100% commitment.
Wow.
To get through it, And after a few months, it. I know where every note is on the neck. I don't have to count frets. I don't have to run octaves. I know where every note is instantly. So just by virtue of the fact that if you do what he says, you're going to know your instrument. You know your instrument. He doesn't play guitar, but because of what he's doing, I learned the instrument upside down, backwards, forwards, every which way. And it was invaluable. I credit John with enabling me to a large degree to be able to make a living with the guitar as a player and as a teacher.
Wow.
I mean, I teach, when I teach, I basically use his method. It gets filtered, through my experience and my opinions and so on. Some places I change things a little bit that I think make it a little more guitar friendly. And I teach a lot of things that he would never come up with because it's guitar centric. But the methodology and the way I organize the material, it's definitely, goes back to him.
At this point, I want to highly recommend Jay's website, which is masterguitarschool.com. It's got some great stories, not only about his teacher, John Elliott, but also life in general, growing up as a musician, a gigging musician, having to load all your stuff up, go to the gig, play for 3 hours, load everything back up, get back home again. Anyway, some very entertaining stories about some of the life experiences that he went through, but also John Elliott. And also, he has a program there where if you're playing guitar at all and some of this stuff makes sense to you and you want to understand it much better, there's also a lesson program, which I can't explain, but you'll see it on the website. And it's very, very worthwhile. I'm going to turn it back over to Jay here to kind of give us an overview of what that's all about. So back to you.
Okay. Well, in 1999, I published a method book. And it's basically, it includes a great deal of John's approach, John's material. And I got John's approval for the book. It's a guitar method, and it's what I use with my own personal students. But the book is not designed to be self-teaching. It requires a qualified instructor. And I built up, for a while there, I built up a kind of a network, a pyramid. With me at the top, I was selling books to teachers who would buy the books at wholesale and sell them to their students, at retail. And I had a little network, a couple dozen cities around the country where I had teachers that were using my method books. Book sales went the way of CDs. The internet killed all that. So for about the last 12 years, I've been rewriting and reformatting the method book to be more functional in the internet environment. It's more self-teaching. Basic business model, or the philosophy of Master Guitar School, is I'm looking for, and my marketing is aimed at people who recognize the value of a methodical, step-by-step approach to learning music and how it applies to the guitar. And it's the most efficient way to learn. Okay. The way I learned, there's, by ear. People say they learn by ear. What that means is they learn by trial and error. Okay. And that's the way I learned initially, put the needle down, hunt and peck, put the needle down, hunt and peck. And it got me so far. But I hit a wall, right? I hit with George Benson and Wes Montgomery, I hit a wall. I wasn't able to figure that stuff out on my own. And I talked about how I went through a year with John before I ever did anything that I hadn't already played. Okay. So if you take my self-teaching process or experience from the time I got my first electric guitar until I started studying with John, that was about 10 years. Okay. So in 10 years, I learned how to play, and it actually took less than 10 years, but I taught myself how to play like Jimi Hendrix, like Eric Clapton, Leslie West, Mark Farner, whatever, And then in the early 70s, I went through a stage where I was interested in singer-songwriters like James Taylor and Neil Young and John Sebastian and, that kind of thing. I taught myself how to do that by listening to records and hunting and pecking and figuring things out that way. But when I got to George Benson, excuse me, I hit the wall. So John, I said the first year I studied with John, we didn't do anything I couldn't already play. I already played. And then after about a year, he spelled a chord. And the instant I'd never played that chord before. And the instant I played it, it was like, oh, that's that George Benson chord I've been trying to figure out for the last 3 years.
Eureka.
Yeah. And there it is. And I understand it. And I can play it in every key, you know?
You understand why it's there.
Right.
And yeah.
So if we take, based on this is a false premise, but I need this premise to make the point. The premise is, if my rate of progress, self-teaching, stayed the same, which it obviously didn't because I'd hit a wall. But let's just say that my rate of progress as an autodidact, right? That's a word that means self-teaching, stayed the same. After that first year with John, I studied with John for 6 more years. He took me through 10 years of stuff in 1 year. So it would have taken me 60 years to get through, to learn what I learned from John in 6 years. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, and that's assuming the rate of progress would stay the same, which it definitely does not. It slows down. And sooner or later, you hit a wall.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And some people can get further than others before they hit the wall. But if you're teaching yourself, eventually you're going to hit the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so a methodical, logical approach, inputting the data in the most linear and sequential way is the most efficient way to learn. And the other aspect of learning the guitar is that it's, 99.9% mechanical. Okay. You're training muscles, nerves, hand-eye coordination, fine motor control. It's all physical. Mm-hmm. And it's based on repetition. And I never say anything about talent. Basically, I don't believe in the concept of talent. Talent is the driver, the motivation, wherever that comes from, and it's usually a neurosis. But the drive and the motivation to do the work that it takes to get to a certain level. And I don't have the same agenda as John or as Doug. I believe that there are many legitimate reasons to take guitar lessons that are not, I want to be a pro. I deal with every student differently depending on where they're at. The guy that comes in and he just wants to be able to be a little bit better doing worship songs at his church is different than the guy that comes in wanting to be a pro guitar player and make a living at it. So I treat those people completely differently. Mm-hmm. No matter what your motivation is, the step-by-step methodical approach is the most efficient. It's the best way to learn. And I have people all the time, students all the time, we're doing something and they'll say, is there a shortcut to this? And I'll say, yes, there is. This is it.
You could waste a year of your own time trying to figure this out, but this gets you there. Right.
You can spend a year learning the same stuff on your own, but I'll teach it to you in 3 weeks.
There you go. So everybody visit masterguitarschool.com and again, check out the lessons and also some of the great stories. You could have also been an author the way you tell some of those stories.
Well,
that's great.
That's
And you leave most of the names out so you don't get you don't implicate anybody.
yeah. I have within the last couple of years, I've recently started using real names where I think I can get away with it.
Or they're deceased and they ain't going to come after you.
Yeah. Yeah. There, you know, in the 70s and maybe up into the early 80s, there was a very prominent organized crime connection to the music business in Kansas City. There was a lot of mob-owned clubs that were basically legitimate business fronts used to launder cocaine money.
Oh.
And so I've played in lots of mob clubs. I've known lots of mafia guys. And so some of those stories, you know, need to be disguised, you know, in some way. Not that I feel like I would be in any danger, you know, it's just common courtesy.
Sure.
But the writing, I enjoy the writing, and that harkens back to my training in philosophy.
Ah, yeah.
If you're into philosophy, you're going to be reading crap tons of stuff, and you're going to be writing crap tons of stuff, complete with Latin phrases ad infinitum. So, you know, life is like that, man. You know, things that you think were wasted, like those 3 years I spent studying philosophy in a formal, you know, setting, and then dropped out of it before I got a degree to be a guitar player. And like, wow, man, that was a waste. No, it's not.
No.
Everything plays into where you are now.
Exactly.
And I would not be writing the blog at all if I hadn't had the training in philosophy. You know, I wouldn't be the writer that I am without all the philosophical stuff. And what I do, I treat the blog the way I treat, you know, everything I do. Basically, I have to enjoy what I do in and of itself. It's its own reward. I played with a bass player one time. I was in a band with a bass player, and we were doing lots of original music, and he had a tune, it was called Funk is Its Own Reward. And that applies, you know, to just everything. So I write because I enjoy it. And as far as the blog goes, you know, it all has to do with music or the guitar or my experiences as a musician, or, you know, sometimes it'll be just a free lesson. How Jimi Hendrix used major triads. You know, there'll be a blog, and it's available to anybody. You don't have to, you know, subscribe or be a member or anything.
Right. There's a lot of free stuff on that website, and he won't dun you with this all. A lot of websites you go to, you give them your email address, and they're all over you, kind of like
Okay, so here's the spiel on that. I definitely, you know, Master Guitar School is it's internet marketing. Okay, say it right up front. I am selling guitar lessons. You know, through that website. But there are many levels. The main list, anybody that interacts with me goes on the list. You know what I'm saying? And the main list, like when you go to the Master Guitar School, you'll see 5 free lessons. Okay, that's a download. It's 5 lessons. It's called the 5 Lesson Foundational Series. and it truly is the foundation of the whole method. All right. So whenever I start a new personal student, I'm always very interested. Did you download the 5-lesson series? And they go, yeah. And so I'm always very interested to see what they came away with.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Did you process it?
Is it having the effect that I intended?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and sometimes somebody will come in and blah blah blah, and I'll tweak it a little bit. You know, I'll tweak it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's 5 free lessons. You have to. It's a PDF download, so you have to supply your email. In marketing lingo, that's called a lead magnet. It's something that you get for free in exchange for your email. So if you download that, you're on the main list. The main list basically gets 1 email a month. Okay, so you're not spammed.
And it's good content too. It's worthwhile content.
Yeah.
Because
there has to be value.
Yeah.
You know, there has to be value to it. So that's the main list. Then there is a site member. Okay. Sign up to be a site member. And there's a link on there that's why become a site member. And it'll give you, oh, you get this and that, and you get this and that, and this and that, and so on. A lot of free stuff. Discounts, you know, big discounts on all the downloads. You have to opt into that. I don't add you to that. And so if you opt in to that, those are the people that I engage with. I want to market and sell to those people, and I want to support them.
And so that's masterguitarschool.com. It's great. Check it out. It'll be very worthwhile. And Jay, you mentioned about your philosophy degree. And so let's get very philosophical here for just a second. If you were a kitchen appliance, what would you be?
I would be a strainer.
A strainer?
Yeah.
Okay. Why is that?
You take out the good stuff and throw away the bad stuff.
Oh, okay. That's very philosophical. Okay, so
you're the one that's using kitchen utensils as a metaphor.
Okay, but only to lead you on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what am I going to say? I'd rather
I'm using it as a scalpel to get into your brain.
I'd rather be a fork than a spoon. No, I don't know. I'd rather be a strainer. There's a little, because it's multifunctional, you know, but the basic thing about it is you strain out good stuff, and you got the good stuff to use, and the bad stuff, you can just toss it in the trash, you know. You need to be able to do that with life, psychologically and emotionally, don't you?
Indeed you do, yes. What is your favorite food?
Beef.
Okay. In any form?
Yeah, pretty much. Burgers, steaks, whatever. My wife is an alternative health practitioner.
Oh, uh-huh.
And years ago, she says, we're going to devise an optimum diet for you based on your blood type. And she has all these protocols, you know, that, you know, people with different blood types do better with different kinds of food, different kinds of diets, you know. And I went, okay, my life is over. It was inevitable. Sooner or later, I'm not going to be able to eat cheeseburgers anymore. And lo and behold, about 80% of what I was eating, because I liked it, was actually really good for me. She was a little irritated by that.
Because she's a different blood type?
Oh, she's totally different.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a O positive.
Okay.
And she's an A negative.
Okay.
And so That's very typical of our marriage. We're not at all alike. We have almost nothing in common.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we eat different kinds of food. We like different kinds of movies, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the secret of we've been married for 47 years is space. I totally support her in what she does, and
Mm-hmm.
she does with me. Obviously, she's a saint
Obviously, right. Mm-hmm.
because being married to a professional musician is not easy, and the music was one of the main things that attracted her to me, but it's also the hardest thing to live with.
Makes sense.
And so I'm working nights and weekends, and the first few years of our marriage I was on the road all the time. Half the time, I shouldn't say all the time, half the time I was on the road each year. But anyway, turns out beef is my power food.
That's interesting. There was a book I remember years ago, Eat for Your Blood Type. And so that always made a lot of sense to me.
That's very familiar. I'm sure that factors into her education and background and whatnot.
That's interesting. Yeah. Because now that you say it, I'm also O positive.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is like AB negative. And so, but
my wife can't
exist.
My wife cannot eat meat the way I do.
Yeah.
And if I eat the way she eats, I can't do anything, man. I don't have the energy to function,
That's very
you learn, but I would say my favorite food is beef. I have it almost every day in one form or another, but I also with it I eat a lot of fresh organic stuff like onions and tomatoes and peppers and carrots. I all that in combination with the beef.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. All right. Technology wise, what is a technology that you could not live without?
Electricity, because all technology basically functions via electricity.
We wouldn't be able to do this without electricity.
Right.
All the important stuff.
Yeah.
And
fortunately, I can play guitar with no electricity.
That's true. That's true.
So you could argue that an acoustic guitar is technology.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Mm-hmm.
But electricity, man, the greatest gift to civilization is the hot shower. And the second greatest gift is air conditioning so that you can take hot showers in the summertime.
And a refrigerator, yeah.
Yeah.
What future technology do you wish for?
Teleportation.
Oh, okay.
Instantly, one place to another.
Kind of like the old Star Trek "Beam Me Up, Scotty" kind of a thing.
Yep.
Only go anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I'd like to, be able to teleport to my gig that's 30 minutes away, or 20 hours of drive time.
Mm-hmm. Good thinking. If you could go back and meet a 10-year-old you, what would you say to them?
Drugs are bad. You and I, right? We're boomers, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Come out of the late 60s. For several years there, we didn't know drugs were bad.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Yeah.
And, long story, but I almost died, from, but let's just say I was scared straight, in 1973, had LSD trip gone horribly wrong.
Right.
And since
on the right path.
Yep.
Yeah.
It caused a complete life change.
Mm-hmm. There you go. So
Yeah.
we are the fortunate ones who lived through some of those learning experiences.
Yeah, we lived and changed. You
For
know,
the better. For
changed.
the better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I every once in a while I'll run into one of my old buddies from 1971 or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they lived, but they haven't changed.
Oh,
Still smoking weed every day, and it's like, man, and they play their music like they did back then. I don't play anything the way I played in 1971. I don't play that way at all anymore.
no.
There are certain things, there's a continuity,
Mhm.
but
Passion. Yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But stylistically and technique wise and depth,
Yeah.
it's way different.
If you could travel back in time and meet anybody in history, who would you choose to meet?
Haven't you ever heard the saying, you might not want to meet your heroes?
I can understand it, although I don't know that I've ever heard it.
You've never heard that?
No,
Be careful about wanting to meet your heroes.
Mm.
They might not be what you have in your mind.
Yeah.
I've experienced that on both sides of the coin. I've met some of my heroes that were douches. Very not pleasant. I've also met some of my heroes that were wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't know.
That's true. That's true.
Right.
But it kind of tears down everything you like
Yeah,
to be.
yeah. People say, "Oh, I'd like to go back and meet, Jesus, or I'd like to go back and meet Confucius or Buddha or Aristotle or whatever." It's like, man, when you talk about that kind of thing, you're talking about somebody like with Jesus, you're talking about somebody from 2,000 years ago in a completely different culture, a completely different way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And this image you have built up in your mind, there's no reason to believe that it's accurate.
Right. Mm-hmm. 100%.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And those are extreme examples, but somebody like, hey man, I'd really love to meet Wes Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Wes was a black man in the 40s and 50s from Indianapolis. And that's not my background. That's not where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I have this image of Wes Montgomery and what he was like, and I can see video of him and the way he talked and all that. But there's a lot of stuff that we fill in.
Yeah.
We project.
Or they don't even consider that happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we project our own personality and our own desires, onto somebody.
Well, thanks, Jay. We appreciate your time and your stories. And again, I would encourage everybody to try out the masterguitarschool.com website, if for no other reason, to read some of the blog posts that he does. They're funny and they're insightful, and they're, for the most part, tasteful. But anyway, I know you're busy. I appreciate the time that you spent here. Have a good day.
Same to you. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to Interesting People I Know. If you know somebody that I need to get to know, please shoot me an email at harryreedacoustic@gmail.com. And thanks.